Welcome to Chinese History and Mythology.
Hey friends, welcome back to Chinese History and Mythology. In the last episode, we talked about two books, Records of the Grand Historian and the Classic of Mountains and Seas. We have already covered most of the content of Records of the Grand Historian in earlier episodes, because it is a record and description built around the development of history. So today, let us talk about the Classic of Mountains and Seas. The Classic of Mountains and Seas is one of the earliest monster encyclopedias in Chinese history. The whole book has 18 chapters. It records more than 500 mountains, over 200 river systems, more than 550 gods, spirits, and strange beasts, and more than 440 states and tribes. Later scholars even called it an ancient book of shamans. What does that mean? It means that, at its core, this book may have been a practical handbook used by shamans. The mountains, rivers, local products, spirits, and rituals recorded in it were very likely things shamans needed to consult and recite when performing rituals, praying to gods, driving away evil spirits, or telling fortunes. So even though the Classic of Mountains and Seas is an ancient Chinese classic with a very long history, many of the monsters recorded in it are actually creatures we have all seen before. Before dragons became famous worldwide, ancient China had its own monster universe. There were creatures with 9 heads, birds with human faces, giant winged beasts, and gods that controlled the sun itself. And they were all written down thousands of years ago in one of China's strangest books, the Classic of Mountains and Seas. More than 2,000 years ago, while the Roman Empire in the West was expanding its territory through conquest, and while Greek philosophers were building systems of thought on this vast land in the East, which is China, the time was shifting from the Warring States period into the Han Dynasty. It was an age of war, division, and rivalry among feudal lords. It does not sound like a very peaceful time. But do you know what is interesting? It was exactly in that age of chaos that the imagination of the ancients was released most wildly. The strange book we are talking about today is called The Classic of Mountains and Seas. The title sounds like some kind of ancient travel record about geography, right? But what is inside is far more magical and far more unsettling than any travel book. Long before Hollywood turned dragons, monsters, aliens, and giant cosmic creatures into global pop culture, ancient Chinese people had already written down a complete monster universe of their own. There was a giant snake with 9 heads, birds with human faces, strange beasts with enormous wings that were half dragon and half bird, and even a god whose open eyes brought daylight and whose closed eyes brought night. These were not inventions made by modern novelists, and they were not concept designs created by today's game companies. They were written down more than 2,000 years ago in one of the strangest and most fascinating books in Chinese history, The Classic of Mountains and Seas. If someone opens The Classic of Mountains and Seas for the first time today, their first reaction usually is not, "This is an ancient Chinese classic." Their first reaction is, "What kind of book even is this?" The Classic of Mountains and Seas feels like a strange mixture. It is part geography, part monster guide, part encyclopedia of ancient myths, and part world map imagined by people long ago. It was roughly formed between the Warring States period and the Han Dynasty. Most scholars believe it was not written in one place, at one time, or by one person. Instead, it was built up from many earlier materials, added to, organized, and revised over time, until it gradually came close to the form we know today in the early Western Han period. The whole book has 18 chapters. It talks about mountains and rivers, but also about strange peoples beyond the seas and within the world. It records herbs and minerals, but also gods and monsters. Its style is repetitive and fragmented, and yet it still feels like a huge storehouse of imagination. What makes this book so fascinating is that it never rushes to explain everything to you. It simply tells you, very calmly, that on a certain mountain there is a certain bird, beyond a certain sea there is a certain god, and in a certain river there is a certain beast. Why did ancient people create these monsters? Of course, there is more than one answer. Some monsters came from fear of the unknown world beyond familiar geography. The ancients faced distant mist, strange mountains, seas they had never crossed, and vague stories passed from one person to another. Other monsters were ways to explain disaster. Why did war suddenly break out? Why did the flood come? Why did fire destroy an entire city? Why did disease take people's lives in ways no one could explain? Most of the time, they did not have modern scientific answers, so they turned that fear and helplessness into a man-eating beast, a bird that brought disaster, or a giant snake that turned every place it passed into swamp. If we look even deeper, the monsters in the classic of mountains and seas often feel like fables too. They turn greed, violence, desire, crossing the line, ambition, and the will of heaven into living images. Once you see that, these monsters are no longer just monsters. They are also one of the ways ancient people tried to make sense of the world. At this point, you might be wondering, why did ancient people write down these strange-looking creatures in the first place? Were they real, or were they not? In fact, ancient people did not record these monsters just because they had too much free time and wanted to make up stories for fun. There were very practical reasons behind it. In China at that time, farming was the foundation of ordinary people's lives, but natural disasters like droughts, floods, and fires could destroy a whole year's harvest at any moment, so ancient people began observing nature. They noticed that after certain animals appeared, some kind of disaster often seemed to follow, so they recorded those connections. The classic of Mountains and Seas describes dozens of strange animals that were believed to bring natural disasters or human misfortune as soon as they appeared. In reality, this reflects the practical knowledge early people built up through long experience in disaster prevention, and it shows an ecological link between animal behavior and natural disasters. Simply put, ancient people were not making up horror stories, they were writing a survival guide. For example, if a certain bird appeared, people had to watch out for fire. If a certain snake appeared, people had to prepare for a great drought. Once these things slowly became more and more mythologized and separated from the experience that first gave rise to them, they turned into monsters in the true sense of the word. On top of that, these creatures also carried ancient people's ideas about power, desire, and war, as well as their boundless imagination when facing the unknown world. It was exactly these complicated reasons that created the strange and dazzling monster universe inside the classic of Mountains and Seas. So now, let us step into the heart of that universe and meet some of the most classic monsters from the classic of Mountains and Seas, one by one. If we talk about the most representative example in films from recent years, then one of them appears in Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald. In the movie, the Zouwu is a huge, agile, brightly colored divine feline creature that seems almost to glow. It is dazzling with many colors, and when it runs, it looks like a burst of silk and flame exploding across the screen. This is how the classic of Mountains and Seas, in the chapter Hai Nei Beijing, describes it. In the land of Lin, there is a precious wild beast. It is about the size of a tiger, with 5 colored patterns on its body, and a tail even longer than its whole body. Its name is Zouwu. If you ride it, you can travel 1,000 miles in a single day. It is also a benevolent beast. It does not eat living animals, only animals that have died naturally. When ancient people created the image of the Zouwu, what it reflected was their hope for an ideal ruler. In the worldview of ancient China, when a wise and virtuous king appeared, auspicious signs would appear under heaven as well. The Zouwu was exactly this kind of auspicious beast. It only appeared in an age of peace ruled by a sage king. If we go back to the traditional description in the classic of Mountains and Seas, the Zouwu was roughly a great beast, something like a tiger, but not completely a tiger, with magnificent fur and a strong sense of auspiciousness. The ancient people who created this monster were probably not trying to frighten anyone. More likely, they wanted to turn abstract ideas like good order under heaven, clear and upright rule, and a sage king on the throne into a divine beast people could actually picture. In other words, the Zouwu was not the embodiment of disaster. It was a signboard for order, animal version of an ancient political ideal. You can think of it as a mythological creature filled with the color of dreams. When the world is running the right way, then deep in the mountains and seas, the right kind of monster will exist too. It had already entered the text no later than the period before the classic of Mountains and Seas was compiled in the Western Han. Later generations kept it in the tradition precisely because it was beautiful enough and auspicious enough. Today, films portray it as a dreamlike beast that moves at incredible speed, and honestly, that interpretation is very accurate. The Zouwu was never meant to be dark or sinister. Its core feeling has always been something magnificent, sacred, and close to the idea that heaven's mandate stands on my side. Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald simply translated that ancient sense of splendor into the visual language of a modern fantasy film. Next, let us talk about a figure many of you may know even better, the nine-tailed fox. As one of the most famous monster figures in the original The Classic of Mountains and Seas, the nine-tailed fox now appears everywhere in myth-inspired films, television, entertainment, and even animation. You could say it is one of the biggest stars in the classic of mountains and seas. Now that we have brought up the nine-tailed fox, I wonder if any of you still remember that in our episode on investiture of the gods, we talked about Daji, the fox spirit who bewitched King Zhou of Shang and brought down a dynasty. But the fate of the nine-tailed fox is much more complicated. Today, when many people hear the words nine-tailed fox, the first things that come to mind are Daji's seduction, a fox spirit who can charm men and throw a dynasty into chaos, or the kind of beautiful, dangerous, slightly sensual and mysterious female creature we often see in popular culture. But I want to tell you a fact that may completely overturn what you thought you knew. The earliest version of the nine-tailed fox was not seductive at all. In fact, it was quite eerie and even a little terrifying. The classic of mountains and seas, in the chapter Nan Shan Jing, says very clearly that on Qingqiu Mountain there is a wild beast shaped like a fox but with 9 tails. Its cry sounds like a baby crying, and it eats people. But if a person eats its meat, that person will not be harmed by evil influences. Pay attention to the key point here. It eats people, and people eat it too. This is a primitive and man-eating fierce beast. In the earliest version of the classic of mountains and seas, the nine-tailed fox did not yet have that later image of the beautiful fox demon. First of all, it was a strange beast, a fox with an unusual number of tails. It was mysterious, rare, and carried the sense of an unnatural sign. Compared with the fox spirit in later palace intrigue stories, the early version was much closer to a boundary creature, something that looked like a mistake in nature, and at the same time like a signal the gods had placed in the wilderness. At first, it was not a character made for seducing men, and it did not survive by charm. It was first recorded simply as a strange life form. Only later did literature, tales of the strange, opera, and folk legends keep adding more layers to it, slowly pushing it in a more feminine, more human, and more moralized direction. By the time we get to the stories of the Shang and Zhou, the investiture of the gods tradition, the image of Diaji, and the later fox spirit tradition, the nine-tailed fox had fully become a monster star that could speak, transform, and interfere with politics and desire. So how did the nine-tailed fox go from a man-eating beast to what people now call a fox spirit? That change took a very long time. In Han Dynasty carved bricks and tomb murals, the nine-tailed fox often appears together with the Queen Mother of the West, and it was portrayed as an auspicious divine beast representing good fortune and many descendants. But in the Ming Dynasty novel, Investiture of the Gods, the nine-tailed fox completely became a demon that brought disaster to the country and suffering to the people. From that point on, the fox spirit became a symbol of the femme fatale. This image later spread to Japan, Korea, and other East Asian countries, influencing the whole East Asian cultural world. What is interesting is that, if you have ever played Pokemon, you definitely know the Pokemon called Ninetales. Its elegant golden fur and its 9 large flowing tails have a very obvious visual resemblance to the nine-tailed fox in the classic of mountains and seas. From an ancient man-eating beast to an auspicious divine creature in Han Dynasty murals, then to a harmful demon in Ming Dynasty fiction, and finally to an elegant and mysterious being in the world of Pokemon, the changing identity of the nine-tailed fox is itself a very interesting story in cultural history. Ninetales in Pokemon immediately makes many people think of the nine-tailed fox, and that association feels very natural because the core traits are just so close. A fox, 9 tails, a spiritual quality, and an elegant beauty with a touch of danger. Here I can only say that they are highly similar in both visual design and concept. I would not call it an officially confirmed direct source, but even this comparison between the ancient and the modern is already interesting enough. Another example is Ari from League of Legends. On Riot's official character page, she is described as a fox-like character, and official music and merchandise also directly use the name Ari, the nine-tailed fox. In animation and Japanese anime, the most widely known and clearly defined nine-tailed fox image is probably the nine tails in Naruto, which is Kurama. The official Naruto site directly says it is one of the tailed beasts, and because it has 9 tails, people simply call it Ninetales. If we widen the scope to include the prototype of the nine-tailed fox, fox spirits, and fox demon imagery, then there are even more works we could talk about. For example, in Netflix's Love, Death, and Robots, there is an episode called Good Hunting, and it tells a story about Huli Jing, which in the Chinese context means a fox spirit or fox demon. The title may not directly say nine-tailed fox, but in the context of Western streaming culture, this is already a very typical example of the Chinese fox spirit entering the view of a global audience. So at this point, many listeners may have a question. Some people believe that the creative inspiration for the nine-tailed fox actually came from the Japanese legend of the nine-tailed fox. So here, let us briefly sort out the historical timeline of how the Chinese nine-tailed fox and the Japanese nine-tailed fox were shaped in history. Of course, if we want to be rigorous, we cannot simply say that the Japanese nine-tailed fox came directly from the classic of mountains and seas. That claim would be too absolute. Japan already had its own native fox spirit tradition, but the very specific motif of the nine-tailed fox and the later fixed story pattern of Tamamo-no-me as the nine-tailed fox were clearly shaped by the continued influence of the Chinese nine-tailed fox tradition. And if we trace that Chinese tradition further back, one of its earliest core sources really can be found in the classic of mountains and seas. Let us first look at the Chinese line. One of the most famous passages in the classic of mountains and seas describes Qingqiu Mountain like this. Its form is like a fox, but with 9 tails. Its cry is like a baby crying. It can eat people, but anyone who eats it will not be harmed by evil influences. This shows that in the Chinese imagination, before the Qin and Han periods, the nine-tailed fox was already a very mature image of a strange beast. If we look a little further across time, we can see that the nine-tailed fox did not exist only in the classic of mountains and seas. In the textual tradition of the Book of Zhou, there is a record of the nine-tailed fox of Qingqiu. In Lushe Chengqiu, before Yu the Great marries the woman of Tushen, what appears is a white fox with 9 tails. Then, by the Tang dynasty, the anthology Yiwen Leiju quotes many older books and says that the nine-tailed fox appears as an auspicious sign when all lands are united as one. In other words, the Chinese nine-tailed fox has a very clear early line of development. First, it was a strange beast from the distant edges of the world, and then it became an auspicious divine beast in the political language of ideal kingship. Then from the Yuan and Ming periods onward, works such as Wu Wang Fa Zhou Shu and Investiture of the Gods fully expanded the story of the nine-tailed fox possessing Daji and bringing chaos to a dynasty. In other words, the Chinese nine-tailed fox itself went through a transformation, from the strange beast or auspicious creature of the classic of mountains and seas, to the demonic fox and bringer of ruin associated with Daji. Now let us look at Japan. Of course, Japan had long had its own native traditions of fox monsters, fox enchantment, and fox possession. That cannot be erased. But the very specific label of the nine-tailed fox did not simply grow out of nowhere in Japanese texts. In Kodo Bank, the entry from the Great Dictionary of the Japanese Language says directly that in both China and Japan, the nine-tailed fox was originally an auspicious beast that appeared in a peaceful age, and only later became an old fox demon. As for its early examples in Japanese texts, they can be traced back to the Engishiki in the year 927, and the wording there is exactly that the nine-tailed fox is a divine beast. This shows that when Japan first received the idea of the nine-tailed fox, what it received was not the later Tamamo-no-me style fox demon, but precisely the earlier Chinese version of an auspicious divine beast. This is highly consistent with the early Chinese line from the classic of mountains and seas to Yiwen Leiju. Japanese materials also clearly state that the story of Tamamo-no-me had already appeared in the 14th century Shinmeikyu, but at that time she was only a fox. Then in the Muromachi period Tamamo Monogatari, it is even written plainly that the fox had 2 tails, not 9. The Japanese scholar Shuichi Terashima also points out that the early Tamamo-no-me legend did not originally include the 9-tail setting. The full merging of Tamamo-no-me and the 9-tailed fox was a much later development. So, how were the 9 tails added? The key lies in the eastward spread of the Chinese Daji story. Shuichi Terashima explains this very clearly. In the Heian period Komiki by Oino Masapusa, we can already see the statement that Daji of Yin was a 9-tailed fox. This shows that Japan knew the Chinese version linking Daji and the 9-tailed fox quite early. But in the medieval Tamamo-no-me legends, the story of Tamamo-no-me inside Japan was still not directly equated with the 9-tailed fox. It was not until the Edo period, with the arrival in Japan of popular Chinese narratives such as Wu Wang Fa Zhou Pinghua and Investiture of the Gods, that the Chinese line of Daji, the 9-tailed fox, and the ruinous demon woman truly merged with Tamamo-no-me. In the end, by the 18th and 19th centuries, in works such as Kanka Byakosu, Ihon Sangoku Yofuden, and Gahon Tamamo no Nogatari, the story took on its fixed form, a golden-haired 9-tailed fox reincarnating through India, China, and Japan, and finally becoming Tamamo-no-me. Nippon.com also states clearly that the popular image of Tamamo-no-me as a 9-tailed fox only became fixed in the Edo period, and that it was the arrival of the Chinese Daji story that changed the popular imagination. So if you place the Chinese and Japanese timelines side by side, the logic becomes very clear. On the Chinese side, between the pre-Qin period and the Han Dynasty, the classic of Mountains and Seas had already written the nine-tailed fox as a specific strange beast. Then, from the Book of Zhou and Lushi Chengqiu to the Tang Dynasty, Yuan Leiju, the nine-tailed fox was reshaped as an auspicious divine beast. Then, in later narrative literature, the nine-tailed fox became tied to Dazi, the fall of kingdoms, and seductive evil. On the Japanese side, when Japan first received the image of the nine-tailed fox, what it received was the auspicious version, described as a divine beast. The early Tamamo no Mae story was at first only about a fox, and even a two-tailed fox. It was only in the Edo period, under the influence of the Chinese Daji narrative, that it formally became the Tamamo no Mae nine-tailed fox that the public knows today. That sequence of development is itself strong indirect evidence. Japan's fox spirit tradition certainly has native elements, but the specific model of the nine-tailed fox, and especially the formation of Tamamo no Mae as the nine-tailed fox, does not look very much like an independent Japanese invention. It looks much more like the result of the Chinese nine-tailed fox motif spreading eastward and then combining with Japan's own native fox monster stories. And if we trace that Chinese motif further back, one of its earliest classical textual sources is the classic of Mountains and Seas. Now let us look at Tao Ti if you have seen The Great Wall, directed by Zhang Yimou and starring Matt Damon. You probably remember those green monsters swarming upward from beneath the wall in huge numbers. In that film, the Tao Ti are shown as social creatures led by a queen. They reproduce very quickly, launch an attack on humans once every 60 years, and their weak point is that their eyes are hidden beneath their armpits. Zhang Yimou once said that he was especially satisfied with the Tao Ti setting because Tao Ti is a beast of greed, a beast of gluttony. Chinese people used it to warn later generations, and even the large bronze food vessels were carved with Tao Ti patterns. Tao Ti has a very strange kind of presence in modern China, because many people are not familiar with the ancient books, and yet they have still seen its face. If you walk into gift shops, antique stores, shops selling bronze ornaments, lucky charms, or even some hotel lobbies and Chinese-style interiors, you may see that front-facing beast mask with exaggerated features, bulging eyes, and a huge open mouth. This kind of design is often broadly called the Tao Ti pattern. On the one hand, it is tightly tied to ancient bronze vessels. On the other hand, in modern consumer culture, it has turned into a decorative symbol of attracting wealth, warding off evil, protecting the home, and showing power. Many people know that it has something to do with gluttony, but they do not realize that this face has survived for an incredibly long time in the visual history of China. So what exactly did the Tao Ti in the classic of Mountains and Seas look like? Based on different records, its image is roughly like this. Its body is like a sheep, but it has a human face. Its eyes are under its armpits. Its teeth are as sharp as a tiger's. Its claws look very much like human hands, and it has a huge head and a giant mouth. Its cry also sounds like a baby crying. Ancient people tied Tao Ti very closely to the idea of greed, and this has a lot to do with ancient Chinese bronze culture. In the Shang and Zhou dynasties, the bronze food vessels used by nobles were often carved with a pattern of a monster that had only a head and no body. That was the Tao Ti pattern. Ancient people carved this monster, which was said to be so greedy that it even ate away its own body, onto the vessels used for food, and the meaning was very clear. When you saw it while eating, you were supposed to remind yourself not to be greedy and not to overeat. This way of carving moral warning directly onto everyday objects is something quite distinctive on a global level. What is even more interesting is that later the image of Tao Ti changed again. In Chinese culture today, if you call someone a Liao Tao, you are not insulting them. You are praising them as someone with a refined knowledge of food, a true gourmet. Tao Ti went from being a warning sign to becoming a proud identity label for food lovers. Tao Ti is a mysterious artistic image in ancient Chinese culture. It often appears on bronze vessels and is known as the Tao Ti pattern, or the beast face pattern. The National Museum of China has a rich collection, including many types such as a square ritual wine vessel with Tao Ti pattern and a handled wine vessel with Tao Ti pattern. Among them is the Da Yu Ding, which is known together with the Da Qi Ding in the Shanghai Museum as one of the 3 great bronze treasures of China. The Great Wall turns Tao Ti into a whole monster army that moves together with something like a hive mind, and that is clearly a cinematic adaptation. Public materials also directly connect the Tao Ti in the film with the Tao Ti from Chinese mythology. But if we pull the camera back to the much older source, the meaning of Tao Ti is not just that it can eat a lot. In the traditional context, it is more like a hunger that can never be satisfied, a way of turning greed itself into a face. When ancient people carved it on bronze vessels, they were probably doing two things at once. On one side, they were strengthening the mysterious power and pressure of ritual and authority. On the other side, they were fixing the abstract danger of uncontrolled desire into a beast face with a mouth that is always open. Later generations explained it as one of the four fiends and tied it more and more tightly to greed. So when modern people see that face, it feels naturally suited to becoming an ornament that is both fierce and linked to wealth. That in itself is very interesting. An ancient warning symbol has been repackaged in the commercial age as a decoration for wealth. Then the Great Wall pushed it one step further and turned it into a giant collective monster with green armor and eyes on its shoulders. Of course, that is no longer exactly what the ancient books described, but the core feelings of devouring, hunting in groups, and bottomless desire still remain very much the same. And here we also have to mention a 2015 film, Monster Hunt. Its director, Raman Hui, said publicly that the creature designs in that film were inspired by the classic of Mountains and Seas. He described the classic of Mountains and Seas as something like an ancient Chinese version of National Geographic, filled with accounts of what kinds of monsters lived in the mountains. Media interviews and film introductions also mention this source of inspiration. Many of the monsters in Monster Hunt have that feeling of being like animals, like plants, like people, and yet not fully like any of them. That is very close to the way creatures are constructed in the classic of Mountains and Seas. The next monster we're going to talk about is called Gudiao. This creature has one very unusual feature. It is half bird and half beast, but the sound it makes is like a crying baby. The classic of Mountains and Seas, in the chapter Nan Shen Jing, records that on Mount Luwu there is a river called Zigang, and in its waters lives a wild creature called Gudiao. It looks like an eagle, but it has horns on its head. Its cry sounds like a baby crying, and it eats people. Just imagine that scene. You are walking by a river, and suddenly you hear the sound of a baby crying somewhere in the distance. You follow the sound, push aside the reeds, and then see a huge horned bird crouching on the surface of the water. It turns its head and stares at you with a pair of cold eyes. Just imagining that is frightening enough. The reason ancient people designed Gudiao in such a contradictory way was probably to create a feeling of eeriness and unease. It looks fierce, but the sound it makes is the crying of a baby, the sound that most easily softens the human heart. That contrast itself is a kind of horror. So when we talk about this monster, in what film have we seen a creature with a similar appearance? If you have seen the brightly colored flying creatures on Pandora in Avatar, and then look back at the description of Gudiao in the classic of Mountains and Seas, you may feel that the two share a strangely similar visual concept. In traditional descriptions, Gudiao is often described as a monster with the body of a bird and the form of a beast. It has the outline of a bird of prey, but it is not really a normal bird, and its most disturbing feature is that its cry sounds like a baby weeping. The moment you hear that detail, you know it was not designed to be cute. It was designed to make people uneasy. Many ancient monster designs understood one very important principle. The most frightening thing is not something completely unfamiliar. It is something familiar with one fatal detail changed. A bird making a sound is normal, but if its cry sounds like a baby, then suddenly the whole thing feels wrong. And that sense of something being wrong is actually one of the core aesthetics of monster design in the classic of Mountains and Seas. If you place Gudiao next to those giant flying creatures in Avatar, of course we cannot say that James Cameron officially used Gudiao as a reference, but many people will naturally think of a similar visual logic. Giant beasts in the sky, exaggerated wingspans, hybrids of animals and myth, creatures that are beautiful and dangerous at the same time. In Avatar, there is another creature that also looks visually similar to a monster described in the classic of Mountains and Seas, and that is called Mingxie. Mingxie is even more direct. A winged snake already carries a very strong cinematic feeling. A snake is already ancient enough, primal enough, and unsettling enough. Then once you give it wings, fear no longer stays on the ground. It becomes fear from every direction. The design of Mingxie shows that ancient people were very sensitive to the idea of the natural order being disrupted. A snake is supposed to slide along the ground, but once it suddenly starts flying, the rules of the world seem to loosen at once. If you place Mingxie next to those giant flying beasts in Avatar, those half-dragon, half-bird creatures with huge wingspans, the image has a striking visual similarity to the flying creatures in that film. This is not an academic claim about direct source or origin. It is more like a conceptual kinship in monster design. Both ancient people and modern designers understood the same thing. If you take a familiar dangerous creature and give it an extra organ that it should not have, the effect becomes twice as powerful. Next to appear is Xiangliu, This is one of the most unforgettable monsters in the classic of Mountains and Seas. It is a giant serpent with 9 heads. According to the classic of Mountains and Seas, in the chapters Da Huang Beijing and Hai Wai Beijing, Xiangli was a servant of Gonggang, the water god. It had 9 heads and the body of a snake, and it could eat the food from 9 mountaintops at the same time. Everywhere it passed turned into poisonous swamp. The foul stench it gave off made it impossible for wild animals to survive, and even crops planted there would not grow. Later, when everywhere it goes, nothing can grow, and the entire ecosystem is destroyed. A disaster-level monster like that follows a visual logic very similar to the giant creatures in Pacific Rim that crawl out of the rift beneath the sea. They are not ordinary enemies. They are disasters on the scale of natural catastrophe. And if you are a Pokemon player, you may also notice that the Pokemon called Hydreigon, with its 3 heads and fierce eyes, also shares a visual similarity with the image of Xianglu in the classic of Mountains and Seas. After talking about the 9-headed serpent, let us move on to another giant snake, one that can swallow an elephant. Bashi. Bashi is the kind of monster whose name already sounds like something that devours things. In traditional accounts, it is so huge that it can swallow an elephant. The key here is not just that it is big, but that it swallows. In ancient Chinese monsters, creatures that devour are especially striking, because what they symbolize is not direct confrontation, but the feeling of the whole world being silently swallowed into one enormous mouth. Think about the sandworms in Dune. The most terrifying thing about them is not that they look ugly, but that they feel like the desert itself has suddenly opened its mouth. Or think about the Sarlacc in Star Wars. The deepest fear it creates is not really its teeth, but that bottomless pit-like structure of consumption. Bashi shares a very similar visual logic with them. Many of the oldest monsters are not complicated. As long as they are big enough, slow enough, and able to swallow, they are already terrifying. That is because being swallowed is the most primitive kind of disappearance. It may not even leave a body behind. Compared with that, modern monsters keep getting more and more detailed, but ancient people had already understood one of the cruelest design secrets of all: let you see yourself being swallowed whole by the world itself. Bashi is one of the largest snakes in ancient Chinese mythology, and it is said to have lived around the Dongting Lake region. The classic of Mountains and Seas, in the chapter Hai Nei Nanjing, records that Bashi could swallow an elephant. After swallowing one, it would take a full 3 years before it spat out the elephant's bones, and if a person of high moral character ate the meat of Bashi, that person would not suffer from illnesses of the stomach or internal organs. The body of Bashi was mixed with several colors, including green, red, and black. Can you imagine the image of a snake swallowing a whole elephant? The body of the snake stretched and distorted from the size of what it had swallowed, and then 3 years later, the white bones of the elephant finally coming back out. That image is incredibly powerful. Later, Chinese people created the idiom, "The human heart is not satisfied, like a snake trying to swallow an elephant," to describe how human greed has no end and how people overreach beyond their own limits. From the perspective of visual imagination, a giant serpent like Bashi, large enough to swallow an elephant, is conceptually very similar to the sandworms that move through the deep desert in Dune. The sandworms can swallow an entire spice harvester in an instant, and Bashi can swallow an elephant in one bite. Both take the ideas of size and devouring to an extreme. And if you have seen the Sarlacc pit in the desert in Star Wars, that underground creature with a giant mouth that slowly digests its prey over 1,000 years, then on the level of concept, it also has a very interesting correspondence with Bashi. Next, let us talk about Bifang. Bifang is a fire bird. This is a setting that modern audiences can understand very quickly, because birds and fire have always been one of the most stable combinations in myths all over the world. But the Chinese version of Bifang has its own distinct character. It is not simply another version of the phoenix. It feels more like a creature that stands on the boundary between disaster and spirit. When it appears, it often brings some kind of unusual sign. The classic of Mountains and Seas, in the chapter Shi Shan Jing, records that there is a kind of bird shaped like a crane, but with only one leg. Its feathers are blue-green with red markings, and it has a white beak. Its name is Bifang. The sound of its cry is like it is calling out its own name. Wherever it appears, a great wildfire will break out. Bifang is a creature that warns of disaster. In ancient China, fire was a huge threat to buildings made of wood. So when ancient people recorded Bifang in the classic of Mountains and Seas, what they were really saying was this: if you see this bird, you had better hurry and check your fire safety at home. Later, the image of Bifang also changed in some stories. Some say it was a divine bird beside the Yellow Emperor, helping him manage matters of fire. But its core image has always remained the same: fire. The moment Bifang is mentioned, Chinese people think of fire, of the color red, and of disaster. In the world of Pokemon, the legendary Pokemon called Moltres, with flames burning all over its body and wings that burst into fire when spread open, is conceptually almost exactly the same as Bifang. If you place it side by side in your mind with Moltres from Pokemon, the association almost happens automatically. Flaming feathers, the feeling of a divine bird, something both rare and not of the ordinary world. Bifang proves one thing: ancient people understood very early how to take the most beautiful things in nature and push them one step further. An ordinary bird can already fly. Set it on fire, and it becomes something that can survive in myth for a very long time. After Bifang, let us look at a completely different kind of divine creature, Baies. If most of the monsters we talked about earlier were the ones that caused trouble, then Baies is the one that comes to solve problems. In ancient Chinese mythology, Baies is a divine beast that understands all things. Its whole body is snow white, it can speak human language, and it knows everything about all the spirits, monsters, and gods under heaven. According to legend, one time the Yellow Emperor was traveling and reached the coast of the Eastern Sea, where he encountered Baies. The Yellow Emperor then asked it about the spirits and gods of the world. In one long telling, Baies named and described exactly 11,520 kinds of spirits and strange creatures, and also taught the Yellow Emperor how to deal with them. The Yellow Emperor ordered people to draw and record all of this, and then made it known to the world. What makes Baies special is not that it is frightening, but that it knows so much. In later tradition, the most famous image of Baies is that of a divine beast able to identify all spirits and gods under heaven, know the names of all things, and explain disasters and strange beings clearly. It is like an Eastern version of a walking encyclopedia. It is both a divine beast and the outward form of an entire system of knowledge. Today, when many people first feel that it is a little like a Pokemon, they usually think of something like Xerneas, a being that carries a natural sense of holiness, wisdom, and the forest. Baies does not win through a giant mouthful of fangs, it wins by knowing. That setting feels very Chinese, because in Chinese mythology, power has never meant only physical strength. It also means the power to name, to classify, and to understand order. Knowledge itself can also be turned into a divine beast. You can think of Baies as a walking encyclopedia of monsters, a divine beast version of Google search. When ancient people created Baies, what they were expressing was a longing for knowledge and for order. In a world filled with the unknown and with danger, people hoped that someone would step forward and tell them, "What is this thing? Is it dangerous? How should I deal with it?" Baies is the one who gives those answers. That is why, in ancient China, people often hung images of Baies on their walls to ward off evil spirits and drive away ghosts. In the world of Pokemon, there is a legendary Pokemon called Xerneas. Its appearance is like a great deer with magnificent antlers, and it gives off the feeling of life and knowledge. Conceptually, that has a certain similarity to Baies as a divine beast of knowledge. Now, let us look at a concept so vast that it is almost beyond imagination: Kunpeng. Strictly speaking, Kunpeng did not first appear in the classic of Mountains and Seas. It first appeared in Zhuangzi, in the chapter Free and Easy Wandering. But this concept is just too iconic, and in terms of visual imagination, it clearly belongs to the same creative lineage as the monster universe of the classic of Mountains and Seas, so we are including it here as well. This is how Zhuangzi describes it. In the northern sea, there is a fish called Kun. Its size is so enormous that no one knows how many thousand miles long it is. It transforms into a bird called Peng. The back of Peng is also so vast that no one knows how many thousand miles across it is, and when it rises and flies, its wings spread out like clouds hanging across the sky. A giant creature moving from the ocean into the heavens. Even today, that idea has lost none of its power. Just imagine it. A fish larger than an entire city bursts out of the sea, transforms in midair into a giant bird whose wings spread like layers of cloud, and then rides the great winds of the 6th month toward the heavenly pool in the south. Zhuangzi used this image to discuss what true freedom is and what true greatness is. In Hollywood movies today, you can still see similar kinds of ideas. When Godzilla rises from the depths of the ocean, or when those giant flying creatures in Avatar sweep across the skies of Pandora, you can feel that same sense of awe that comes from sheer size itself. What makes Kunpeng so fascinating is that ancient people dared to imagine a creature so vast that it went beyond common sense. In the sea, there is Kun, so huge that you cannot see its edge. When it rises into flight, it becomes Peng, with wings like clouds hanging from the sky. Even today, that idea still carries a feeling almost like science fiction. What truly makes it fascinating is not exactly what it looks like, but the way it challenges the limits of human imagination when it comes to scale. You begin to notice that whether it is in modern monster films or in space operas, whenever creators want to produce an overwhelming sense of greatness, they always return in the end to giant creatures.
Ancient China had already done this long ago, and done it with remarkable clarity. It does not give you too many biological details. It gives you only a body so immense that it almost touches the sky itself. That kind of imagination is not inferior to the modern world at all. Next, let us talk about a creature called Hundun. Hundun follows a very different path. It is not necessarily the kind of standard monster with lots of teeth or lots of tentacles. It feels more like a physical symbol of the undivided world. It is blurred, whole, and without clear boundaries, which makes it especially suitable for conceptual comparison with those dark, devouring entities and shapeless evil beings we often see in modern visual culture. In Chinese mythology, Hundun is a very ancient and very unusual concept. The classic of mountains and seas in the chapter Xishan Jing records that there is a Mount Tian, and in that mountain there is a divine being. Its shape is like a yellow sack. Its whole body is red like cinnabar fire. It has 6 feet and 4 wings. It has no face and no facial features, and yet it is strangely good at singing and dancing. The name of this divine being is Dai Jiang, and later many people called it Hundun, a red sack with no face, 6 legs, and 4 wings, and yet able to sing and dance. This may be one of the most surreal descriptions in all of the classic of mountains and seas. Ancient people used Hundun to symbolize the dim and unformed state before heaven and earth were separated. Nothing had shape yet, nothing had a name yet. Everything was mixed together, impossible to distinguish. This original idea of chaos also appears later in popular culture. For example, the dweller in darkness in Shang-Chi, that ancient giant dark being that seems able to swallow everything, can very easily remind people of the Hundun motif in Chinese mythology, as well as devouring ancient creatures like Tao Ti. This is still only a conceptual similarity, not a claim of direct borrowing, but the idea of turning chaos itself into a creature clearly does not exist only in modern superhero films. When we talk about monsters, then one thing we absolutely have to mention is China's great totem, the dragon. What many people do not realize is that in China, the dragon is not just one single creature. It is a whole dragon system. And in terms of appearance, it is completely different from the dragons of the West. In Chinese mythology, there are actually many kinds of dragons, and they are very different from the fire-breathing dragons with bat-like wings that we see in Western mythology. Here, we are going to introduce 2 of the most representative dragon gods, Zhulong and Yinglong. These 2 are especially worth talking about. Zhulong carries a very strong cosmic scale. It is deeply tied to day and night, to light, and to the sense of time itself. When it opens its eyes, it becomes day. When it closes them, it becomes night. This kind of setting feels very much like ancient people taking the whole mechanism of how the world works and compressing it into one divine dragon. Let us begin with Zhulong. Zhulong is one of the oldest and most powerful dragons in ancient Chinese mythology. Its image is a human face on a serpent body, stretching for 1,000 miles, with a body that is completely red. Its powers are astonishing. When it opens its eyes, it becomes daytime. When it closes its eyes, it becomes night. When it blows out a breath, it becomes winter. When it exhales, it becomes summer. It does not need to do anything dramatic or earth-shaking. Simply by opening and closing its eyes, by breathing in and out, it controls the alternation of day and night and the cycle of the 4 seasons across the whole world. This kind of imagination, where the laws of the universe are directly turned into a god, is actually very rare anywhere in the world. Now let us look at Yinglong. Yinglong is different from Zhulong. Its most striking feature is that it has wings. In ancient Chinese mythology, Yinglong is almost like a superhero-level figure. In the Great Battle of Zhulu, between the Yellow Emperor and Qiu, Yinglong stood on the Yellow Emperor's side and helped him kill Qiu. Later, when Yu the Great was controlling the floods, Yinglong used its tail to sweep across the land. Wherever its tail passed, river channels were formed, and the floodwaters flowed along those channels into the sea. Yinglong is both a god of war and a hero of flood control. Its image goes far beyond the Western dragon, which is often cast simply as a monster or a guardian of treasure. So when we talk about Chinese dragons, there are two things to remember. First, there is not just one kind of Chinese dragon. Jilong, Yinglong, Jiaolong, and others all have different powers and different forms. Second, the biggest difference between Chinese dragons and Western dragons is this. In most cases, Chinese dragons are positive figures. They bring rain, bring harvest, and help human beings. They are auspicious creatures, not evil dragons waiting to be slain by a hero. Yinglong is also easier for modern audiences to grasp because it has wings. That point really matters. Many people think all Chinese dragons are wingless, like long-flying serpents. But Yinglong shows very clearly that Chinese mythology itself already contains many different dragon forms. They are not simple equivalents of the Western dragon. Western dragons often emphasize hoarding treasure, breathing fire, and physical combat. The roles of Chinese dragons are much more complex. They are tied to rain, celestial signs, imperial legitimacy, and the order of the land itself. Some dragons are like weather systems. Some dragons are like the imagination of hydraulic engineering. Some dragons are almost the same thing as a law of the world. Ancient people did not design these dragons only because they looked impressive. They created them because they wanted to find a visible master switch for how the world works.
Now that we have met these classic monsters from the classic of mountains and seas, you may have noticed something very interesting. These creatures, recorded in an ancient Chinese book thousands of years ago, seem to appear everywhere in global popular culture today. Of course, no official source is going to say that these works directly copied or directly took inspiration from the classic of mountains and seas. But if you put the two kinds of images side by side, the visual and conceptual similarities are simply too obvious to ignore, and many people have talked about that resemblance. The Fantastic Beasts film series included Zhou. In James Cameron's Avatar series, the flying creatures on Pandora have a strangely strong visual echo of Gudiao and Mingxi. In Pacific Rim, those kaiju crawling out of the rift beneath the sea carry that same overwhelming sense of disaster, which feels very close to Shanglu as the embodiment of natural catastrophe. In Dune, those sandworms moving through the desert, able to swallow an entire mining vehicle in one bite, feel almost like twins created in another time and space when compared with Ba-She swallowing an elephant. In the main Star Wars films, the Sarlacc waiting for prey inside the giant desert pit, with its circular mouth full of teeth and its painfully long process of digestion, also brings to mind the story of Ba-She taking 3 years to spit out an elephant's bones. In the Marvel film Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, the Dweller in Darkness, with that indescribable and hard-to-define sense of chaos, has a visual connection to the image of Hundun. And in China's own fantasy film series Monster Hunt, the little monster king Huba, the main character in the film, was directly said by the director to have been designed with inspiration from the classic of mountains and seas, using Hundun as one of the reference points. The Pokemon side is even more interesting, because its visual language is naturally well suited for this kind of comparison. Of course, Pokemon has its own mixed sources. Japanese yokai, Western mythology, animals from nature, and modern design language are all part of it. In public materials, I have not seen Game Freak officially announce that these Pokemon were directly based on the classic of mountains and seas, so the comparisons below are only visual and conceptual associations, not conclusions about origin.
But that kind of association is powerful in itself. Ninetales and the Nine-Tailed Fox are almost the kind of pairing anyone can match at a glance. The furious water dragon feeling of Gyarados easily makes Chinese viewers think of Jiaolong. The many-headed destructive force of Hydreigon fits naturally beside Shanglu. Moltres as a firebird almost automatically leads people to Baifeng, and Xerneas, with its air of sacred knowledge and its deer-like divine form, also easily brings Bei's Neishimon. What is most interesting here is not really who copied whom, it is that you suddenly realize this, thousands of years ago, without films, without game engines, and without concept art directors, people had already written monster archetypes that still feel modern today. A lot of modern fantasy design looks like it has taken a huge step forward, but when you turn around and look back, the ancients were already standing there. At this point, some listeners may already feel like saying, yes, of course, everything comes from China. But actually, the reason for introducing the classic of mountains and seas and pointing out these similarities is not to argue with people about where these monsters originally came from, or where the creative inspiration began, The point is to use the monster images from these films to help listeners understand this book and the things recorded in it. Telling it this way is far more vivid than simply reading from the page and saying, there is a monster with a human face, a bird's body, and 2 pairs of wings. Compared with that direct kind of reading, this way has much more imagery, and it helps the people listening to this podcast more directly picture what the monsters in the book may have looked like. More than 2,000 years ago, ancient Chinese people had already written all of this down. With a writing brush, in a text of just over 30,000 characters, they created a complete universe that included more than 40 kingdoms, 550 mountains, 300 waterways, and more than 200 gods, spirits, and strange beasts. In this universe, there are dragon gods that control day and night, giant snakes that can swallow elephants, serpent monsters with 9 heads, one-legged divine birds covered in flame, white divine beasts that know both the heavens above and the earth below, ancient creatures that can shift between the ocean and the sky, and warning creatures whose appearance foretells drought, fire, and flood. Why do we still love these monster stories today? Because these monsters are not just frightening props. They are the result of human fear and curiosity in the face of the unknown world. They are ancient people's way of turning natural phenomena into vivid images. They are also metaphors and warnings about the weaknesses of human nature. When Tao Ti stares at you from a bronze vessel with those eyes hidden beneath its armpits, it is reminding you not to be greedy. When the 9-tailed fox seduces King Zhou in Investiture of the Gods, it is warning you that beauty can be more dangerous than blades. When Bashe swallows a whole elephant, it is telling you the price of endless greed. These monster stories have crossed thousands of years, and they still remain alive today in Hollywood blockbusters and Pokemon games. Why do modern people still keep loving monster stories? The reason is actually very simple. Monsters will always carry those vast, hard-to-explain things better than humans can. War is too complicated, but turn it into a 9-headed serpent and people remember it. Greed is too abstract, but give it the face of a beast with a mouth that is always open, and people understand it at once. The unknown world is too immense, but put a winged serpent in the sky, and fear suddenly has a shape. Modern film industries are very good at making those shapes look more realistic, but ancient myths were good at putting much more meaning behind those shapes. That is exactly why the classic of mountains and seas can still influence global popular culture today. It is not valuable because it is ancient. It is valuable because it was so far ahead of its time. So far ahead that when modern people go back and read it, it still feels like something striking has hit their minds. Before dragons became familiar to people all over the world, ancient China already had its own monster universe. Xian Liu with its 9 heads, Tao Ti with a human face, Zhulong controlling day and night, Bashe able to swallow an elephant. All of them were written into that strangest of ancient Chinese books, waiting quietly for thousands of years, until today, when the world has finally begun to see them. So the next time you sit in a movie theater and see that giant multicolored feline beast on the screen, or when you are playing Pokemon and see that elegant fox with 9 tails, you might want to stop and think for a moment. The creative source behind that image may reach back more than 2,000 years, to the east, to an ancient universe built piece by countless unnamed writers. In that age, there was no Hollywood, no computer-generated effects, and no Marvel universe. But those ancient Chinese people living around the Yellow River had already used their imagination and their observation of the world to create a monster encyclopedia powerful enough to shape global popular culture. So when we see 9-headed monsters, giant flying beasts, and devouring abyss creatures in the cinema today, or when we see 9 tails, firebirds, and sacred deer in games, what is truly surprising is not that China also had monsters. What is truly surprising is something else. It is that in an age when writing had only just begun to organize the world, someone had already written a complete monster universe onto bamboo slips and pages. Hollywood invented the modern monster industry, but before that, ancient China had already created a whole monster universe of its own. Back then, there were no special effects. There was only imagination. And when it comes to imagination, the ancients were never poorer than we are. That is the classic of mountains and seas, an ancient Eastern monster universe written on bamboo slips, born more than 2,000 years ago, old and yet unbelievably ahead of its time. Alright, that is everything for today. Thank you for listening to Chinese history and mythology. If you enjoy my show, please follow, like, and share it with the people around you. You are also very welcome to leave a comment on my blog and share topics you are interested in at bonniespodcasthandbook.blogspot.com. I am really looking forward to hearing from you. Alright, that is all for today's Chinese history and mythology. See you next episode.
The sky in light, Nua healed the broken heart. Fuxi traced the world's design. Every age leaves stories bright. Yaya dynasty shaped bronze. Shang dynasty cast oracle bones. Thou dynasty built right. Qin dynasty forged the great walls. Han dynasty opened Silk Road winds. Three kingdoms dynasty turned war to tales. Qin dynasty led ink and mountains bloom. Sui dynasty carved the Grand Canal. Tang dynasty crowned the world with art. Song dynasty raised learning's flame. Yuan dynasty swept the northern plains. Ming dynasty strengthened walls again. Qing dynasty closed an ancient end. Every age leaves stories bright. History and myth ignite in endless light. China's history moves in mystery through the night. Footsteps of this land enchant the world in light. Han dynasty opened Silk Road winds. Three kingdoms dynasty turned war to tales. Qin dynasty led ink and mountains bloom. Sui dynasty carved the Grand Canal. Tang dynasty crowned the world with art. Song dynasty raised learning.